Prophet ﷺ says that she looked away because she couldn't see her baby in that pain anymore. This is the Prophet ﷺ telling you that Hajar ran out of the ability to even look at Ismail alayhi salam in this state. And she started to run between As-Safa and Al-Marwa. And the Prophet ﷺ says in the hadith that this is where the Hujjaj and the people of Umrah take the practice of going between Safa and Marwa. And then when she heard that voice, or she heard that sound of Jibreel alayhi salam, as she was running in desperation, she called out, "Whoever it is that caused me to hear you, whoever you are, I have no idea who you are. هل عندك غواث? Any help, any water, anything you can do for us?" And at that moment, the Prophet ﷺ says that she looked at Jibreel alayhi salam, and Jibreel alayhi salam with his heel struck the ground, and then Zamzam comes bursting out, providing not just for her and her child, but bursting through the ground. And he says, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that Hajar goes to the ground and she starts to dig the well around that bursting water. And he says, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Yarhamullah Ismail, law tarakat Zamzam lakanat Zamzam aynan ma'ina. He said, may Allah have mercy on the mother of Ismail. If she would have left Zamzam to flow, it would have flown throughout the earth, meaning it would have flowed throughout the earth and touched every single part of its surface. But she carved out that area of the well from which we benefit from today. Why do I start with the story for the particular subject that we have today? Hajar was looking for water for her child, but the barakah of her dua was water for generations after her, from which we still drink today. That well that Jibreel alayhi salam struck open, when you go there and you drink Zamzam, or when the Hujjaj come back and they bring you that Zamzam, it is still flowing from that very moment, and that is the barakah, the blessing of the sincerity of that woman and the sincerity of that family. And Ibrahim alayhi salam, whose du'as are throughout the Quran, where Allah Azza wa Jal always multiplies what his Khalil Ibrahim asks him. When Ibrahim alayhi salam comes back to the Kaaba, or comes back to raise the foundations of the Kaaba with his son Ismail alayhi salam, and Allah Azza wa Jal tells him, now call out. The question that Ibrahim asked was, وَمَا يَبْلُغُ صَوْتِي? What's going to cause my voice to reach people around the world? And subhanAllah, look at what Al-Qurtubi rahimahullah says. Ibrahim alayhi salam was talking about the blessing of his voice being able to reach people in his time at that moment. What's going to cause my voice, this man in the middle of a desert, to reach people? But till now, the call of Ibrahim alayhi salam is being heard thousands of years later, and people are responding, labbaik Allahumma labbaik. And that's the barakah, the blessing of the dua of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So what's the connection here between dua and this specific concept of barakah, which is more than what you could have asked for, more than what you comprehended, more than what you would have ever dreamt of? What is it about the connection between dua and barakah that we take from this family in particular? Years later, the Prophet ﷺ says that Ibrahim ﷺ came back to visit Ismail ﷺ after his mother had passed away. So this is after the death of Hajar. And it's a longer hadith, so I'll get to the latter part of it in one sentence from the Messenger ﷺ. The story goes that Ibrahim finds a woman in the house of Ismail, that is his first wife from the people of Jurhum who surrounded them, and asked her how she was doing without introducing himself, and she thought he was just an old wayfarer. And all she had to say was, things are terrible. She complained about the water, she complained about the lack of food, she complained about the difficulties of Ismail alayhi salam's task. And Ibrahim alayhi salam says, when your husband comes home, give him salam and tell him he should change the gate of his home. And Ismail alayhi salam comes home and says, what happened today? She says, an old man came by and I invited him in. He asked me how I was doing. I told him how we were doing. What did he say? He said, change the gate of the house. Ibrahim alayhi salam meant, of course, change her. And so Ismail alayhi salam said, well, that's a sign from my father. I've got to move on from you. Marries another woman. Ibrahim comes later and finds the exact opposite person. A woman who is grateful, who finds the barakah, the blessing of everything that is in her home.